The reason they felt they needed to do that, Jesse, is because if they told their audience the truth, that when gas is the most expensive it's been, flights are super expensive, that 5,000 kids decided to spend a weekend in summer traveling across the country to go hear from conservative speakers, maybe the audience of The View would think twice about all of their ideas. That's why they felt so compelled to try to smear our wonderful summit this last weekend.
Yeah, they have nothing else to talk about. Maybe you should get the lawyer that worked on that Covington Catholic school case. What was that, a $200 million settlement? I think, Charlie, you could use the money, and your students definitely could, too.
Her disgusting, gross elitism and her complete out-of-touch nature with respect to the rest of the world. Sunny Hostin goes on The View and decides now would be a great time to dump all over the so-called uneducated.
What we did not have is white women who voted about 52%. Right, for Donald Trump. Uneducated white women, is my understanding. You have Latino men actually voting more for him, and you have and black men was not the story. We're not the story here because they voted almost 80% for the vice president.
It all started with a crowd of 5,000 high school and college students gathering across the country, not for Coachella or some wild spring break party, but for a conservative youth summit. Plane tickets were expensive, gas prices were through the roof, and yet these kids still showed up, eager to listen, learn, and debate ideas. But when Sunny Hostin from The View heard about it, she didn't celebrate their curiosity or drive. No, she mocked it. Sunny went on national television and threw shade at the entire event. No nuance, no facts, just the usual smug eye-roll treatment. Instead of acknowledging that these young people had spent their own money and time to attend something meaningful to them, she lumped them all into a narrative of extremism and ignorance. It wasn't just a side comment, it was a full-on dismissal. And for what? Because the event didn't match her politics? But here's the kicker. She didn't just criticize the organizers or the speakers, she went after the kids.
Just because you didn't go to college doesn't mean you're stupid, and it doesn't mean that you don't have wisdom. You can go to college and get a bunch of irrelevant facts about how men can allegedly give birth or whatever they teach. But I said this to our team. I said working people, the muscular class, including working women, they are so in favor of Trump, and they don't want to be called stupid or uneducated.
16 and 17-year-olds now dragged into the mud on a massive platform like The View, painted with labels they didn't earn and don't deserve. That's where things really started heating up. Charlie Kirk, who organized the summit, wasn't going to sit quietly while high schoolers were being smeared just for showing up. By the way, before we continue, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. It really helps us grow and share more intriguing stories. Now let's continue.
Charlie Kirk's the founder and CEO of Turning Point USA and the author of the new book, The College Scam. So, Charlie, do you accept The View's apology?
I mean, regardless of whether or not I accept it, the question is, do our students accept it? That's really what's at heart here. They went after our 5,000 students at our event there of high school and college kids. And look, I get attacked all the time. People say false things. I'm a public figure. But when you go after 16 and 17-year-olds that travel from across the country that then have to live for the rest of their life with a shadow over them because someone at ABC says that they might be linked to neo-Nazis.
Kirk fired back. Not just with words, but with legal heat. And that's when the real story began to unravel. Charlie Kirk wasn't just angry, he was ready to fight back. And not with some fiery rant or a Twitter spat. He came armed with lawyers. After Sunny's comments on The View, Kirk made it clear this wasn't going to slide. He threatened legal action, not for his own reputation he's used to being attacked, but for the thousands of kids who now had to carry the weight of being publicly labeled with terms like extremist or worse. Think about it. You're a teenager. You travel across the country, excited to attend a conference that aligns with your beliefs.
But look, what did it take for us to get to the point of an apology? We had to threaten a lawsuit, Jesse. And by the way, we're still entertaining it. We're talking to some of the best lawyers out there that are experts in this. And as you know, these things can be very complicated. There's a lot of facts and circumstances around it. But we're not going to let this go because you should not be able to smear 5,000 high school and college kids and then just be able to walk away with it.
Then you wake up and see a nationally televised talk show dragging your name through the mud, calling your event dangerous. Kirk made it personal not for himself, but for them. He said, "I'm a public figure, I can take it." But these kids, they'll live with that stain forever. And the worst part? ABC, the network behind The View, tried to patch things up with a weak apology. Kirk's response? Not good enough.
It's amazing. She's specifically there referring to the women, but of course it's the non-college educated men as well who voted for Donald Trump. And the nerve of this woman to whom the country has given so much to try to dump on people who didn't go to college. Look at you. Look at your achievements. How do you like the so-called uneducated now, Sunny?
You don't throw dirt on 5,000 students and then pretend it didn't happen. He started talking to top legal teams, the same ones who won massive defamation settlements in other high-profile cases. We're talking about lawsuits that ended in hundreds of millions of dollars. Kirk's message was crystal clear. This wasn't just going to blow over. If The View thought they could smear kids and walk away, they had another thing coming. And that's when Megyn Kelly stepped in calm, ruthless, and ready to dissect everything Sunny said, piece by piece. Megyn Kelly didn't storm in yelling or throwing punches. She didn't need to. She showed up with something way more dangerous receipts.
Sunny Hostin I think she went to Binghamton undergrad, and she went to Notre Dame Law School, which is a great law school. Her son right now is at Harvard. That son she wants us to think is sitting there oppressed, who she's got to fight on behalf of because America is so awful to him. They're educating him right now at Harvard University. And Jason, would you take a look at this? Because I'm going to guess, I haven't been to your house down in Tennessee, but I'm going to guess it doesn't look like this. This is Sunny Hostin's home in this shitty country that she can't stand, that doesn't treat Black people like Sunny well. She let People magazine feature her home. Look at this dump. This country sucks. She went to Notre Dame Law School. She makes millions on The View. Her son's at Harvard. I'm sure her daughter's at private school on her way to some Ivy League. This is where Sunny lives. And F off, America. I can't stand how you've kept us all in chains. That's her messaging.
While Sunny Hostin was up on her high horse, throwing around labels and delivering dramatic one-liners, Megyn brought the calm, sharp edge of a seasoned attorney. She didn't need the spotlight. She just needed the facts. Instead of matching Sunny's outrage with more emotion, Megyn quietly broke down her entire argument, showing how weak it really was. She pointed out how Sunny flips outrage on and off depending on who she's talking about. If a conservative does something controversial, full media meltdown. But when the same kind of extremism shows up on her side, silence, crickets, like it never happened. And it wasn't just a vague claim. Megyn laid it out step by step. Sunny's commentary on race, politics, justice, it all looked principled until you lined it up next to the actual fact. That's when the holes appeared. Megyn exposed how Sunny carefully cherry-picks context, crafting narratives that sound powerful on TV but fall apart under real scrutiny. It was like watching someone rip off a mask in slow motion. What made Megyn's takedown so brutal wasn't the volume, was the precision. She made it obvious. Sunny's fire isn't fueled by truth, it's performance. Her entire persona as a justice warrior? More like a well-rehearsed act, built to stir emotions, not inform. And just as Sunny's fortress was starting to shake, Charlie Kirk returned with even more weight-digging straight into her classist takes and her elitist attitude. Charlie Kirk didn't waste time. After Megyn calmly dismantled Sunny's double standards, he came back swinging, but not with cheap insults. He went straight for the core of Sunny's elitism. See, Sunny had gone on The View and started throwing shade at what she called uneducated white women who voted for Trump. She used the word uneducated like it meant stupid.
Do you think if a liberal came to speak at University of Kentucky, they'd give an open mic like I just did to a conservative and had a discussion like this?
I certainly hope they would.
No, they wouldn't. Because speech is not a left-wing value. That is why they have to deploy shock troops called Antifa to go after everywhere I go. When I go to University of California, Davis next week, there has to be 120 police officers because of the threats, the violent threats of liberals that want me dead, that want to disrupt our events. There are no right-wing hecklers that come to events like this. I think it's rather clear There's one side that is trying to do everything they can to shut one side up, and one side that's trying to open up the marketplace of ideas. And I think that's rather self-evident.
And that didn't sit right with a lot of people, especially Kirk. Charlie wasn't just speaking for himself. He spoke for the so-called muscular class working Americans, both men and women who get their hands dirty and keep this country running. According to Sunny, if you didn't go to college, your opinion didn't count. But Charlie flipped the script. He reminded everyone that just because someone didn't go to college doesn't mean they lack wisdom. In fact, sometimes they're the ones with the most common sense. He even mocked the kind of stuff being taught at universities these days, like theories about men giving birth, and said no wonder people are losing faith in higher education. Kirk used this moment to connect with everyday Americans who are tired of being talked down to by TV hosts in designer blazers. And while Sunny's outrage came from behind a cushy talk show desk, Kirk's came from the real world, where people actually have to live with the consequences of bad policies. He made it crystal clear. Sunny wasn't just out of touch, she was living in a bubble, looking down on the very people she claims to fight for. But this wasn't just about attitude, it was about truth. And what came next would strip away even more layers from Sunny's polished public image.
Sunny Hostin, over at The View, had some choice words for Brittany Mahomes, who's married to the other Mahomes guy who plays for the Chiefs. She had the temerity to like a Trump post online, and she's been taking shit for it ever since. She wound up posting this defensive tweet saying, God, people are like, you gotta settle down, like, go be a better person and don't jump all over people for just random stuff. And here's Sunny Hostin weighing in on it.
Since she is in an interracial marriage, she should have known that to support a racist is problematic. Her children are biracial, and her family is one of the families that in the 70s could not have lived in any of Donald Trump's buildings. So
Sunny Hostin had built her entire persona as the fierce moral voice of The View. She strutted in every day, like she was the last line of defense between society and chaos, ready to call out injustice, ready to fight the big fights. But Charlie Kirk and Megyn Kelly weren't buying it. And now they were pulling back the curtain on Sunny's performance piece by piece. This time, they focused on what she didn't say. Kirk pointed out how Sunny's so-called outrage didn't come from any real principle, it was selective, strategic. If something outrageous happened on her political side, she looked the other way. But when a conservative sneezed in the wrong direction, Sunny was lighting torches and rallying the outrage mob. She had a pattern: show up loud, act like she's defending justice, and drop some fiery quotes that sound good in headlines. But when it came time for facts, voting records, or timelines,
Sunny Hostin of The View finds out that this is fantastic. She is descended from slaveholders. Here's what she said when she went out on The View.
Really reluctant to do it because I just sensed that there could be something in my family history that would be disappointing. But what I found out was that my mother's family, while they are Puerto Rican, they actually originate from Spain. And the reason that they moved to Puerto Rico is because the slave trade had been sort of canceled in Spain and then Curacao, and then they moved all of their slaves to Puerto Rico. And so the family business, I had been told that they were printers and journalists.
she was silent. That's where Kirk stepped in. He didn't yell or wave his arms around. He brought cold, hard receipts. Not tweets, not slogans, real data. He made it obvious. Sunny's truth-telling was all branding. Her fiery takes were more about staying relevant in the culture war than actually standing for something. And that's what made the whole thing so frustrating for people watching at home, because real issues were being turned into sound bites. Sunny wasn't just playing politics, she was selling a character, and Kirk was now pulling that character apart brick by brick, while Megyn Kelly was quietly stacking up the evidence to finish the job. Now the spotlight turned from Sunny's words to her real-life privilege, and things started getting uncomfortable. Charlie Kirk wasn't just talking theory anymore. He brought up the actual lifestyle Sunny lives while she paints herself as a voice for the oppressed. Let's talk facts.
First of all, I'm thrilled you're doing the next debate, Megyn. That's a step in the right direction, because honestly, you're going to ask the tough questions very firmly and fairly. More, that Univision person that was there a couple debates ago was just obviously had an agenda, and you're going to hold them accountable. And also, you have a really big audience of people of all different political backgrounds. And finally, Megyn, I think, and I don't know what you're going to ask, but I would imagine you're going to get some answers on this trans thing, which I think is a civilizational defining issue, right? That has not received any attention.
By NBC,
right?
Not a question.
Because they know it's a loser. Right?
Sunny went to Notre Dame Law School, one of the top law schools in the country. Her son? He's currently at Harvard, not community college, not night school, Harvard. And yet, she gets on national TV and tells everyone how broken and unfair America is, especially for families like hers. She claims to be fighting for those suffering under a system stacked against them. But Kirk wasn't having it. He brought up her lavish home, featured proudly in People magazine. Sunny Hostin lives in a multi-million-dollar mansion, sends her kids to elite private schools, and collects TV paychecks worth millions. Kirk practically shouted, "Look around you, Sunny. This country has given you everything. And now you're sitting there pretending like you're chained down? Like you're trapped in some cruel system?" He made the contrast sharp and painful. While she complains about how terrible America is, she's living better than 99% of the people she claims to represent. And yet, she has the audacity to lecture the so-called uneducated working class about privilege and oppression. This wasn't about left or right anymore. It was about honesty. And right now, Sunny's story wasn't matching her lifestyle. It looked more like theater than truth.
The revisionist media coverage of it, Charlie, just yet another reminder of how important the lane you and I are in has become for anybody wanting actual honest information.
Yeah, a couple thoughts. First, that's the #1 podcast out there. And so it's not just some fringe thing. It does very, very well. It always almost near the top of the podcast charts. Number two, I just laugh when, grown men talk like 15-year-old girls with their up inflection of their voice. We don't really know if they're guilty or in. It's like, it just drives me crazy. It's like that's central casting for Upper East Side metrosexual New York Times podcast host.
And as Kirk and Kelly kept digging, that curtain wasn't just slipping, it was collapsing. At this point, Sunny's carefully built image was starting to look more like a stage set than reality. But Charlie Kirk wasn't finished. He went even deeper, not just into what Sunny said, but how she said it and what she chose to ignore. Every time conservatives were involved in controversy, Sunny was front and center, torch in hand, shouting about danger and extremism. But when something serious came from her own political side, silence. Nothing. It was like she vanished into thin air. Kirk laid it out clearly. This wasn't just hypocrisy, it was strategy. He called it selective fury. And he brought receipts cases where Sunny had been silent on left-wing political violence, even as conservative voices faced protests, bans, and threats. Kirk wasn't ranting here. He was pointing to actual voting records, statements, and behavior patterns that revealed a double standard miles wide. He framed her outrage as a business model, not a moral stance, not a sense of duty, but a brand. According to Kirk, Sunny's job wasn't to be fair or balanced, it was to stir emotion, sell fear, and gain applause from an audience already trained to agree with her. The real bombshell? Her whole justice warrior thing wasn't even real. It was rented outrage. She cashed in on controversy like it was a subscription service. And when the facts didn't line up with the drama, she just skipped the facts. That's when Megyn Kelly stepped back in with that same calm, surgical tornado sliced through even more of Sunny's fragile media shell. Now Megyn Kelly stepped back in, cool and collected, like a surgeon ready for the final cut. While Kirk had used a sledgehammer, Kelly brought the scalpel. She didn't scream. She didn't mock. She just flipped open her mental binder and started stacking the inconsistencies, one on top of another. She pointed out how Sunny had a pattern not just of bias, but of deliberately spinning things, Like a magician hiding a card up her sleeve, Sunny reshaped context to fit her narrative. Kelly showed how she took complicated issues like race, justice, or political accountability and trimmed them down into one-sided sound bites that always painted her side as the heroes and everyone else as the villains. Megyn wasn't impressed. She laid out example after example where Sunny's claims either left out key facts or relied on emotional buzzwords instead of substance. It wasn't just lazy journalism, it was performance. Carefully crafted, polished, and sold to millions as truth. One of the most cutting examples? Sunny's take on Brittany Mahomes' Patrick Mahomes' wife liking a Trump-related post. Sunny didn't just critique it. She said that because Brittany was in an interracial marriage, she should have known it was problematic. That was Sunny's reasoning. Kelly pounced. She asked, "Since when did being married to someone of a certain race mean you no longer get to have a political opinion?" It was all part of the same theme: moral superiority with no room for nuance, no room for disagreement, and absolutely no tolerance for facts that don't support the script. And the more Kelly peeled back, the more fake the whole act started to look. And just when you thought it couldn't get more twisted, another layer peeled off and this one hit even harder. It turns out Sunny Hostin, the same person who often talks about historical injustice and systemic oppression, made a shocking on-air admission. While digging into her family history, she revealed something she was clearly uncomfortable with. Her ancestors were not just from Puerto Rico, as she'd always emphasized they were originally from Spain. And they didn't just move to Puerto Rico for better opportunities. They moved there to continue, the slave trade. Sunny said it herself. Her family relocated because slavery had been outlawed in Spain, so they transferred their operations to Puerto Rico. And this wasn't some distant rumor. Sunny admitted that the family business involved slave ownership. She had grown up believing they were printers and journalists, but nope, they owned people. This changed everything. The same woman who presents herself as a moral authority on racism, privilege, and oppression turned out to be a descendant of slaveholders. And instead of addressing it with humility or reflection, she just brushed past it and went back to attacking others. It was the ultimate contradiction. The woman pointing fingers at others for problematic behavior had a family history rooted in the very thing she claims to fight against. It exposed how selective her outrage really was. Because when the uncomfortable truth came knocking on her door, she just turned the volume down and moved on. But Kelly and Kirk weren't done yet. They were just getting to the part where Sunny's whole media empire of moral outrage started falling in on itself. As Sunny's personal contradictions started piling up, Megyn Kelly and Charlie Kirk didn't let up. They pushed deeper right into the heart of how The View and other media outlets protect voices like Sunny's from real scrutiny. Kelly made a brutal point. People like Sunny thrive in echo chambers. These are media spaces where no one pushes back, where the audience claps automatically, and where so-called truth bounces around without ever being questioned. And Sunny? She's a pro at it. She delivers fiery sound bites that feel powerful in the moment but fall apart the second someone actually asks for facts. This wasn't just about bad takes or one-sided opinions. Kelly exposed how the media system itself enables Sunny. When she goes off on conservatives, no one at The View challenges her. No fact checks, no pushback, just applause and a smooth transition to commercial break. But when the roles are reversed, when someone from her side does something truly questionable, Sunny either downplays it or goes totally silent. And Kelly didn't need to raise her voice. Her calm breakdown of Sunny's media behavior felt more devastating than any viral rant. She exposed how Sunny's truth is more like a choose-your-own-adventure book, where the ending is always the same: emotional outrage, dramatic posture, no accountability. Meanwhile, Charlie Kirk kept stacking up facts, pointing out the obvious. Sunny's media influence wasn't based on consistent principles. It was based on performance-high drama with just enough outrage to keep the ratings up. But the more they exposed, the more fragile Sunny's brand started to look, and the biggest hit was still coming. Now it was time for the knockout. Charlie Kirk, fed up with the games, made the final comparison that put everything into perspective. He pointed out the reality of being a conservative speaker on college campuses today, something Sunny and her media bubble never talk about. Kirk described what it's actually like, trying to speak at the University of California, Davis while needing over 100 police officers for protection. Not because of some random threat, but because organized groups like Antifa show up, ready to disrupt, shout down, and in some cases even physically attack anyone they disagree with. That's not hypothetical. That's his normal. Meanwhile, he said, no left-wing speaker has to worry about that when they come to conservative states. No conservative group is storming into liberal events trying to shut people down. Why? Because, as Kirk said, speech is not a left-wing value anymore. That line hit like a punch. He made it clear this isn't about left versus right. This is about who believes in free speech and who wants to silence anyone they disagree with. And in Kirk's eyes, Sunny and people like her weren't just complicit in the censorship, they were cheerleaders for it. She mocks kids who go to conservative events. She labels half the country as uneducated. She throws words like racist and dangerous around like confetti. But when real threats come for those she disagrees with, she's nowhere to be found. And just when the stage was set, Megyn Kelly stepped forward once again. Not to shout, but to slice through Sunny's media act one last time with pure, quiet precision. Megyn Kelly came back for the final dissection and, this time, she didn't just aim at Sunny's words. She went after the whole act. And she did it with that same calm, surgical style that made every point land like a blade. While Kirk had exposed the chaos behind the scenes, Kelly focused on the performance itself, how Sunny had mastered the role of TV moralist, playing the part of the truth teller, the justice warrior, the fearless commentator. But Megyn wasn't buying it. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. She peeled back the entire performance, layer by layer. She showed how Sunny turns every segment into a dramatic show, always leading to a tearful, righteous climax. But under the surface, it was all stagecraft. Kelly highlighted Sunny's constant reshaping of events, her habit of ignoring facts that didn't fit her message, and her knack for turning every disagreement into a moral crisis. It wasn't just annoying, it was dangerous, because people believed her. They watched The View and assumed Sunny was delivering facts, not emotion-based scripts. But Kelly made it clear. Sunny's commentary wasn't built on truth, it was built for applause. She exposed how Sunny's moral high ground was less about conviction and more about control, keeping the spotlight, guiding the conversation, and shutting out anything that didn't fit her carefully built narrative. Every time Kelly pulled a string, another piece of Sunny's media image came loose. And when it was all laid out, Sunny didn't look like a truth teller. She looked like someone performing for a crowd that had stopped asking questions a long time ago. By now, Sunny's entire media persona was hanging by a thread, and Charlie Kirk and Megyn Kelly didn't even need to be in the same room to pull it apart. What made this takedown so brutal wasn't shouting or insults, it was the precision. While Sunny kept performing, Kirk and Kelly just kept showing receipts. And the result? Her whole narrative started to crumble like a poorly baked souffle under a heat lamp. She wanted to be seen as the voice of reason, the guardian of progressive values, the fearless critic of conservative danger. But the more she spoke, the clearer it became she was just trying to hold together a collapsing story with duct tape and recycled outrage. Kelly didn't go for the drama. She just calmly unpacked how Sunny twisted every headline to suit her politics. She pointed out how Sunny's big, emotional takes couldn't stand up to a simple timeline or a complete quote. It wasn't personal, it was forensic. And here's what made it worse. Kirk and Kelly didn't even confront her directly. There was no debate stage, no face-to-face clash. They didn't need it. Their commentary spread across podcasts, interviews, and social media, cut deeper than any live argument ever could. It was a demolition by truth. And as Sunny kept talking, the silence around her grew louder. Her arguments stopped landing. Her moral declarations started sounding hollow. Because when facts step into the room, theater always takes a step back. But it wasn't over just yet. There was one last point that sealed the whole takedown, and it was a lesson every public figure should remember. The final blow wasn't loud or dramatic. It was simplened, it exposed everything. Charlie Kirk and Megyn Kelly had spent the entire takedown showing exactly how Sunny Hostin built her public image on emotion, not truth. And in the end, it came down to this. When someone builds their whole identity on selective outrage, they're always one fact away from collapse. Kirk pointed out something the mainstream media won't touch. Sunny isn't powerful because she's right. She's powerful because she has airtime, a massive platform, millions of people watching her every word. But airtime doesn't equal authority, and applause doesn't equal accuracy. What Kirk and Kelly proved was that all it takes is a little critical thinking to expose the cracks. Sunny's arguments, shallow. Her outrage, selective. Her facts, often missing. She's not informing viewers, she's performing for them. And when someone like that finally meets real scrutiny, they don't explode, they wither. Kelly drove the last point home. She didn't yell. She didn't call names. She just laid out how Sunny operates in a bubble where no one questions her. And that's dangerous. Because when there's no one to challenge your claims, you start believing your own script. So while Sunny kept shouting into her echo chamber, Kirk and Kelly stood on the outside, quietly tearing down every piece of her narrative with receipts and reason. No stage, no confrontation, just the truth, doing what it always do, sex-posing everything. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to this channel. Also, drop your thoughts in the comments. See you on the next one.